Hi guys! So today's the day. You may have heard me muse at length about the pros and cons of the various planner systems, but today I'm going to go through each one of them one by one and tell you my conclusions about what I like them for, what I don't like them for, and my experiences with each one. So let's start with ringbound planners. These were not actually my first introduction to planners. I started off with bound and spiral planners many years ago. I'll get to them in a minute. But I started experimenting with ringbound planners last year, and I tried quite a few of them, as you can see by my reasonable collection here, and I've got some others on the shelf as well. So the things that I like about ringbound planners are obviously, first of all, the fact that they're so customizable. So you can put in as many sections as you want. You can have 10 sections for different things. You can use them as a planner, you can use them as a journal, you can use them for storing important documents, you can use them as a combination of all of those things. And so I totally understand why they're so popular. Because, say you want to have a year at a glance, a month on 2 pages, a weekly view, a daily view, and then you want to have sections for various projects, and you want to have a work planner and a personal planner, you can have them all in one book, which, since we're coming up to One Book July, is of particular relevance, because if you have a ringbound planner, that means that you can get basically whatever you want into a single book, which can be very appealing. So I really like that. I also like the scope for customization and decoration, in that you can put in your own dashboards, you can make your own dividers. Not that I have, but I've got some customized decorative pieces in my various planners. You can also have complete freedom. Say you realize that you've made a mistake and you don't like a particular page or a particular section. You can just take it out and start over again, and no one will ever know. That is very appealing. So I think that those things are all like really positive points. And another thing, obviously, is that you can interchange the binders. As long as you've got inserts of a particular size, you can just rotate from binder to binder, and the binders are timeless. So, if you acquire a big collection and you love all of them, you can switch them out and you can get to use all of them, and your insides will still remain the same. So I think that those are all really big plus points. The downsides, though, for me, the biggest downside is, well, I guess there are two biggest downsides. One of them is I find it really difficult to write with the rings. Some of it might be because I'm left-handed, but I know that a lot of right-handed people also have the same problem. And I know that you can take them out, you can take the pages out of the rings to write on them, but for me that kind of defeats the purpose. If you have a planner, unless it's like, because I don't do really complicated decorating where I have a long session with the planner, like I just want to open it and be able to write, and I find it very difficult for that. Another thing is the aesthetics of the rings. I've talked about this before in other videos. There's just something that I associate, that the rings remind me of school or office binders. In the UK, they're called lever arch files, and I think in the US, they're the 3-ring binders, just, the basic office supply binders that you'd use in a kind of school or office environment. And even though you can get really beautiful binders with amazing covers and decorations and awesome colors, I just still can't get past that association with office, just kind of cheap office supplies, even though I know it's ridiculous to compare something like this. This is a Jamie Notes Malden lookalike, but it still is something that I think I've never been able to get over. And so after all of the experimentation and trying planners for different ring planners for different things, I came to the conclusion that for me, they work best as reference binders. So I'm really happy because I bought all of these different ring planners, and I do like ring planners, but I think for me, this is the capacity that they work best in. And it's a very nice compromise between using them, which I kind of find frustrating, sort of on an active daily level, and not getting to use them at all. And they've actually filled an important gap in my archiving systems, because beforehand I had all of my important documents, like for my flat, and my own documents, work things, and like my, I don't know, passport, birth certificate, all of that kind of stuff I had in this giant accordion file where it was a mess. It was impossible to find anything. It was really frustrating, and it was gigantic, and I hated getting it out. Whereas now I have them divided into these beautiful binders which are very easy to access, and it makes me happy to look at them. So even boring things like water bills are actually kind of a delight because I get to use my awesome planner. So this, for example, some of you may have seen this set up before, is my home binder. So I keep everything related to our flat, so like bills and stuff like that. Then this is my furry facts, and here I keep everything related to our dogs. So just like things like their vet information, their vaccinations, all of that kind of stuff. So it's really purely for reference. I don't write anything in here. Occasionally, if I have to write something in one of these, I'll just, take a sheet, because I've acquired many blank inserts, mostly from Happy Scrappy, over the course of my time experimenting with ring planners. So they'll last me forever, and I just take a sheet and put it in, but that doesn't happen very often. So like, say, it would be something like, say, for example, they installed a lock on our bins outside, and I wrote down the code in here just so that it will have a permanent place in the flat binder. Then another thing I use them for is sticker storage. So it's again just reference material, storing things. So this is all of my writable stickers. They all stay in here, and I think that is the sort of thing that ring binders worked really, really well for me, because I wouldn't be able to think of as convenient a way to store these where I'd have easy access to them all, and I get to use this nice binder. Then I've also got a ring binder that I'm calling, rather confusingly, this is kind of like our sort of home management binder, and this is the flat binder. So this is anything to do with like documents to do with the flat, so like invoices, insurance, receipts, all of that kind of stuff. And it's very convenient if you live in Europe, or well, much of the world, because this kind of official document always gets sent on A4 paper, and you just fold it in half, and then it's perfect for punching in an and putting in an A5 binder. So this one I use for keeping things that are useful to our household. So it's things like the occasional recipe. We don't really experiment very much with new recipes, which is kind of bad, but occasionally if I see something on Instagram that I like, I'll put it in here, and then I know that it's there. And then these are things like recipe for homemade toothpaste, recipe for Dread shampoo, and then this is like things like checklists. Oh, this is another one, a vegan cheesecake for the Jewish holiday of Shavuot. So it's just stuff like this that I know that it will be convenient to have somewhere where it doesn't change, and on the relatively rare occasions when I want to add something, I know where to put it. So like beforehand with the cheesecake, we would always forget what the cheesecake recipe was, and then the next year we'd be like, what did we do? What about cheesecake? We have to find a vegan cheesecake recipe. Now, because I just set this up this year, I know we'll never have that kind of confusion again because it's in here. So these are the sorts of things that I think ring binders are perfect for me. With this one, this is the one that I set up most recently. It could have gone in something else like, say, a traveler's notebook or a discbound planner. But I decided to use this for one thing because I happen to have a spare one and I really like this design. And also because, like I mentioned, it's so flexible that if I decided that I didn't want this recipe anymore, I could just take it out and replace it. Or if I decided that I needed to add another 3 sections to it, I could without messing anything up. It's just so forgiving in that way. So that is what I like ring binders for, but I find that as planners, I don't like them because of the ring issue. And also another like kind of major issue that I have with them is archiving. And I know that this is a big issue in general because I've seen a lot of people on YouTube talk about it. And I also know that there are lots of, brilliant ways of archiving. So it's not that I mean to say that it's impossible to archive these, but I think coming from a background in bound planners and spiral planners, I just like the idea that you can take the book at the end of the year, put it on your shelf, and that's it. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And the thought of having a planner that's made up of loose pages is somehow very disconcerting to me. And then equally, the idea of having to do something with them at the end of the year, or take them out halfway through the year and put them somewhere. If I put them in a box, then I'm never going to check them. If I can't be bothered to kind of go through the trouble of, sort of binding them in a different way. And I just like to have my planner all together for the year, which I will talk about more in a minute. So that is, for me, the pros and cons of ringed planners. Then the next type of planner that I have to talk about is spiral bound planners. So like I mentioned, in my early days of planning, which is like about, I guess, nearly 20 years ago, this was actually the first planner that I ever remember using, and it was a spiral planner. It was this brand, the Jewish calendar. My mum got it for me. And this is just like a really kind of basic spiral planner. It's not like, I don't think that the spirals are particularly high quality, but I've never had another spiral bound planner, so I don't have anything to compare it to. And things that I like about spiral planners, and obviously because this is the only one I've ever used, I can't, like go into huge detail comparing them. I've never had an Inkwell Press or an Erin Condren or anything like that. But what I like about them is that they are similar to a bound planner in that you have everything together. And I just like the idea of having a book that's your entire year. For me, for a planner, that's the best thing, because I don't like the idea of using only a few months at a time. This is, I think, another issue that I have with ring planners, is that often you feel like, I think because you've got a limited amount of room, but you can do what you want with it. There's a temptation to, like, say, take out the last 6 months of the year because you don't actually need to carry them around with you, so that you have more room for other sections. That's something that I did anyway. And then I find it frustrating because if you want to forward plan something, you might, or you want to check something, I don't know, I just like the idea of having the whole year with me. If you have a spiral planner, it kind of, like, by nature, it's sort of delineated, it's telling you what it's for. It's like, here, I've got the whole year. Use me just like this. And I think that can be something that people don't like about spiral planners and bound planners, that they're kind of like bossy and they tell you what to do. So they're like, this is all I have. I don't have notes pages. I just have a year's diary, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of people like the freedom of being able to decide exactly what they want in their planner. And they're like, I want to have 2 week on 2-page views, one for work and one for personal, or I don't want to have a calendar at all, or I don't know. Whereas this is just like, it is what it is. And I quite like that. I find it very reassuring knowing that the whole year is here and that's what it's for. I also like, although I never really thought about this until I heard people commenting on it on YouTube, but I do like the fact that you can turn these over on themselves. It's not, for me, it's not a huge thing. It's not a deal breaker. So I know that there's some people who say that they really much prefer spiral planners because they can do this. For me, it doesn't bother me if I can't do it, but if you have one, it is quite nice to be able to do it. However, with this planner, I've put it in this Disc Agenda Diva, so you can't actually do that. And the reason that I did that leads me on to one of my main cons for spiral planners, and that is the look of those spirals. I don't know what it is. I think that, again, just like with ring-bound planners, there's something about the spiral that reminds me of like cheap spiral notebooks that I used to use when I was a kid, just like the really, really basic ones. And it's an association that I can't get out of my head. I think that this goes back to, like, when I was a kid, I was like, I think many of us in the planner community, I was a stationery addict, and I loved going to stationery shops, and I loved buying like notebooks and blank books. And the ones that I loved the most were the hardback bound journals, because I wanted to be a writer, and they reminded me of a book. So on the outside, they look like a book, and you, like, all you have to do is fill it, and then you have a book in it. You can imagine that it's a published book. That's what I used to do when I was a kid. Whereas with a spiral bound planner, it reminded me of a notebook. It didn't look like it was something that could be published, if that makes sense. And those associations have stuck with me. So whenever I see a spiral bound planner, they just remind me of, notebooks that I used in school, notebooks that I used in university. They don't seem elegant to me. And this is not at all to denigrate any of the really beautiful spiral bound planners that are out there. That's just my own personal association. And I think I tried to get over, and I tried to use this planner as my main home planner a few months ago, and I just couldn't get over it. The spiral really bugged me. I just kept thinking, I wish that this was bound. So putting it inside this Disc Agenda Diva cover made all the difference, because now, even though I can still see the spiral when it's open, it somehow doesn't bother me as much, because when it's closed, it looks like a beautiful binder. And I do love the look of ring binders on the outside. It's just the rings that I don't really like. So this is perfect because it looks like this beautiful binder. Well, it is a beautiful binder, and it doesn't have rings, so it's excellent. And I love it so much that I actually started using this again as a home planner. I'll go over this more in my One Book July intro setup where I'll go through my whole mountain of planners and tell you what I'm using them for and how I'm going to change things for One Book July. Another pro, I think, I'm switching back between pros and cons, but hopefully it's not too distracting. So another pro with spiral planners is that you can tear pages out. This can actually be both a pro and a con. So like I mentioned, in the autumn, I was using this as a home planner, and I had it decorated like this. It was just like kind of this happy random collection of colorful stickers intermingled with appointments and to-dos. And then I decided that I didn't want to use it anymore as a home planner. And it was kind of bugging me that it was like partly used, because that's one of my like pet peeves. And so I decided to tear out all of the used pages so that I would just have this nice, clean, fresh planner, and I was just going to use this for reference to see when the Jewish holidays were, which I then did for the next few months until I started using it again as a home planner. So now I kind of regret that, because at the time I was like, it's beautiful, a fresh start. But now I wish that I had those pages, because I was using it for like, I don't know, maybe 2 months, 2.5 months. And it would be nice to look back on it now, especially now that I started using it again. Whereas now it feels like I've just started over from the beginning, and these are the first few pages that have been used. So that's kind of sad. So it's a very useful feature that you can tear out the pages, but you must beware not to be reckless and use it with wild abandon like I did and then regret it. So another kind of con about spiral bound planners is that it's harder to customize them. So they're almost the direct opposite of ring bound planners, in that you can take things out, but it's harder to put things in. There are ways, like if you punch holes in the same places as these holes and then like snip in between, you can put things in. I've done that before, but it's kind of a pain, and you can add like, a couple of pages, but you wouldn't really be able to add like a whole section as you would with a ring planner, obviously. In the same way, you can make bookmarks and you can customize, but it's a bit more limited, partly because you've got the coil and partly just because it's so time consuming that I don't know, I couldn't imagine like adding 100 pages or something to this. It's basically there to be a diary, and depending on which one you get, that it might have notes pages or something else, but that's essentially what you kind of have to work with, what they give you, which I don't really mind, because particularly if you have multiple planners, you just like this is fine. So like, for example, this doesn't have a monthly view, but that doesn't bother me, because what I use it for, I don't need a monthly view. But if I did need a monthly view and I wanted to have the Jewish holidays, say, and this planner is great for that, then it would be possible to add in a monthly view, but it would be much more awkward than it would be to add a monthly view into a ring planner. So those are my thoughts on spiral planners. I really like this one. I'm going to continue using this. I'm going to get the new one when it comes out in August, because I really like having a planner that gives me all of the Jewish holidays. But I don't think I would ever be drawn to another spiral planner basically because of the aesthetic issue, which I know is just a weird personal thing, but that is basically a deal breaker for me. I think I would never like something like the Inkwell Press. I like the look of the inserts, but just the fact that it's spiral bound is like, no. So on to the next type of planner. And this is kind of a surprise for me. This is the discbound system. So I only found out about discbound planners relatively recently, definitely like well after I got into the planner community on YouTube. And I've talked about this before in my other video about discbound planners. At first I was just like, what's that? That doesn't really seem very relevant or useful to me. And then when I started doing this series, I thought I'd actually like to find out what those are like, just so that I can, say that I've tried one out. But I didn't expect to like them. And then straight away, like when I got my first one, I just instantly loved it. And I was very surprised, because I really hadn't been expecting that. And I think my love of discbound planners culminated in the launch of the Disc Agendas by Doki Book, which are just awesome. They're just like some of my favorite planners, and this was a big surprise to me. So things that I like about the discbound system are, for one thing, I like the look of the discs. And I know this seems funny because the discs are kind of like, it's a similar concept to rings, but like I said, because I have these long-term associations with rings, I think of, the like school and office binders. with discbound, because I'd never heard of this system, I'd never seen it before, I have no associations. It just reminds me of beautiful, happy planners. And literally the happy planner, actually, that's one of them. But it just looks really jolly to me. I think that they look much nicer. I don't know why, but they just look completely different to me than ringbound planners, and I really like the look of them. I like the ones like the happy planner where the discs are on the outside. So like this Disc Agenda Diva, you could carry it around like this and have the rings on the outside, and I really, really like the look. Or alternatively, you can, with this one, you can put it inside cover, which is also very nice, and that's how I have it, just because it's got pockets and a pen loop. But I just think it's an awesome look. The next thing that I like about it is that it's just as customizable as a ringbound planner. So for me, I feel like this is really the best of both worlds, in that it's exactly as customizable as a ringbound planner, but it doesn't have the aesthetic drawbacks that I find with the ringbound planner. So you can take pages out, you can put them back in, you can rearrange them, you can punch things and put them in really easily. You can treat it exactly as you would treat a ringbound planner, but you don't have the issues with, well, like for one thing, I think with ringbound planners, there are issues of like things happening to the rings, having to be careful about the rings sometimes, getting bent and having to be replaced, or then you have to get rid of the planner, etc. Whereas discs, because it's like a kind of modular system, the discs don't break, especially if you've got metal ones like these. The worst that can happen is that a piece of paper that you're using will kind of get like bent or torn and not be able to, like, not fit in anymore, and then you just replace the piece of paper. So I think it's a very sturdy system. It's just like completely customizable. You can build your own planner. You can have whatever sections you want, just as you would with a ringbound planner. And I really like that, because it somehow doesn't like bother me aesthetically, but it can do all of the same things. The other thing that I like about it is that I don't know why, this doesn't really make sense, but for some reason I don't find the discs to get in the way as much as rings with writing. I've never had a problem with discs. Obviously it depends somewhat on the size of the discs. But these discs are on the big side. I've got a Levenger Circa notebook as well, which has small discs, and those, like, you can hardly feel them. You don't really notice that they're there. The discs are bigger, but I still don't find it as much of a problem. Maybe it's psychological. Maybe it's just because I really like the discbound system. I'm more forgiving to it. But I find it quite easy to write with, and it's also got the added bonus, just like a spiral planner, that if you are using it on its own without a cover, you can turn it over on itself and write like this. So it's kind of like, it's like a cross between a spiral planner and a ringbound planner, but I like it better than either of those, both aesthetically and functionally. I just really can't think of any problems with it. I guess my only complaint about it, there are two. One is the issue of archiving. But again, this is not as much of a problem as I find it for ringbound planners, because say you get to the end of the year and you've used this as your planner and you want to archive it, you can just take it like this and put it on the shelf, and it will be, it's like a book. So all you're losing is the discs, and then you can buy a new set of discs. You don't have to, if you're using a binder, you don't have to buy a new binder. You just buy a new set of discs and a new set of inserts, and that's it. So you can do that if you want to. Otherwise, if you don't want to spend money on more discs, then you have a problem, if you see what I mean. Then you're in the same situation as you would be with a ring binder. And I think that is me, because I wouldn't want to have to buy new discs every year. So I think in my personal case, what I'm using this for, this is a meal planner, and my other discbound planner is a finance planner. And I don't think that I will keep those inserts after the year is over, because it's not, maybe the finance planner, I don't know, it would be useful to be able to track your expenses from year to year or something. But I don't think that I really absolutely need to. So I think I'd rather just recycle them. And the same thing goes for this, definitely for the meal planner. I don't need to have a record of last year's meals that we planned. So practically for me it's not an issue, but in theory it's a kind of philosophical theoretical problem. It can be. And then the other thing is just the variety that these come in. So at the moment you can basically only get the Happy Planner, the Arc Staples Martha Stewart planner, the discbound, the Levenger, and this one. And so they're all like A5 or kind of like A4 letter size. There aren't any smaller ones, and so that's not a huge amount of variety. But because some of those, like particularly the Doki Books one, is so nice that it doesn't bother me that you can't get more of them. But I think it would be nice to like be able to have a smaller size. And I've heard Happy Planner have said that they're going to be bringing out a mini Happy Planner. I don't know how big that will be. I'm assuming it would be probably something like personal size or A6. I can't imagine that it would be much smaller than that. So that's very exciting. But yeah, at the moment, they're kind of restricted in range compared to, like, say, discbound planners or spiral planners. But that's not their fault. It's just, it would be nice to see them develop even more. So that's discbound. Kind of an unexpected favorite among my various types of planners. So I'm running out of space. Okay, so the next type of planner is traveler's notebooks. So traveler's notebooks, kind of like discbound planners, is something that I'd never heard of before I got into the planner community. When I first found out about them, I was intrigued by them because I liked the look of them, and I sort of liked the idea, the concept of being able to put, different notebooks inside a cover. But in practical terms, over probably the next year and a half, my experiments with traveler's notebooks have led me to the conclusion that I just can't get them to work for me as planners. So the reasons for this are kind of different than the reasons why I don't like using ringbound planners as planners. The first reason is that for traveler's notebooks, it seems to me that generally, the most common type of inserts that you can get for them are undated. And if you know me, you know that I just can't do undated inserts. It's just like a personality defect or something of mine. I just can't do it. I want my inserts to be dated. Likewise, I am allergic to printing my own inserts. I can't print my own stuff. I just want it to be professionally done, come from a printer. I can't, a professional printer. So that's kind of a problem, because the way that traveler's notebooks are set up is that, you have this series of relatively thin booklets, and you sort of swap them out. So another problem that goes along with that is that usually the inserts that you get, like the calendar inserts, are only, say, for 12 weeks or something. Whereas, as I mentioned before, I like to have the whole year together. So all in all, it's just I've never found it sort of a good system for a planner for these, which is a shame, because, as I said, I like the idea of it. When I was trying to experiment with finding the perfect system for my personal planner, I had been using a ringbound planner, and when I realized that I didn't want to use the rings, I thought maybe traveler's notebook would be a good system. And I quite like the idea of a traveler's notebook in that respect, because just like a ringbound planner, you can have different sections. So, it's easy to demarcate them because, it goes by book. So you can say this book is my calendar, or this book is my monthly, this book is my weekly, this is my daily, and this is my YouTube schedule or something. That I had that kind of thinking in mind. But I instantly ran into the problem with the diary section. And then I was thinking at one point of using a Moleskine, which, you can get one that's similar size to the pocket size traveler's notebook. But the problem with that is that if you have a really thick insert, then you won't be able to fit 3 inserts of exactly the same size in, because they'll be too thick. So then you end up with one really thick insert and then say 3 or 4 thinner ones, and that bugged me because I like everything to be symmetrical. So that didn't work. So the kind of attempt to use traveler's notebook as a planner has never worked for those reasons. I've kind of started off with the cons here. So the last con, while I'm talking about cons, is that in a way, these are very flexible in that you can switch out inserts. So say you've got an insert for, I don't know, this is for films that we want to see in the cinema. That's what we're using this one. This is the cinephile. So films we want to see in the cinema, films that we want to see at home, and then TV shows. So like, say I decided that I didn't want to go to the cinema anymore. I know that's ridiculous, but imagine I decided that I didn't need this insert anymore. I could just take it out and replace it with something else, and there would be no harm done. But if you have, like, say you've, I don't know, written a couple of pages, and then you realize that you actually want to use that insert for something else, or you realize that you just kind of, I don't know, made a mistake and you don't like the format and you wish that you could change it. With a ring planner or a spiral planner, you could, or a discbound planner, you could just tear out those pages and start over again. But with this, it's kind of like a bound planner in that the booklets themselves are bound, so you're sort of restricted. So in a way, I feel like it's almost like the worst of both worlds, because you don't have like a nice solid chunky planner as you would with a bound planner or a spiral planner that you can just take and archive at the end of the year. You have all of these little booklets that only last for a certain amount of time that are kind of like, they are archivable, but they just feel kind of bitty to me, if that makes sense, in that they're not like, you know, big chunky books, which is what I like, and I'm getting up to that. I will talk about that in a minute. So yeah, they're on the one hand, they're kind of restrictive, but then on the other hand, they don't sort of give you the benefits that a very restrictive system like a bound planner does, in that, you know, they're sort of divided into these various sections. Again, this is like not at all meant as an insult to traveler's notebooks. This is just how I've found them. So I think a lot of it is just my, I don't know, like I haven't somehow found the right way to use them as a planner. But what I think that they are really good for is, for one thing, if you have a book of different types of lists. So like this, it's perfect for this cinephile, because when I was trying to work out like the best way to keep these lists, if I had this in a bound notebook, I wouldn't know how many pages to allocate for cinema, how many pages to allocate for films to see at home, etc. And then, you know, I might end up with like running out of space on one and then having too much space on another. Sorry if you can hear sounds in the background, that's Mochi jumping around. So with this, because I can have a different booklet for each one, it's perfect, because I can just keep writing this until it ends. And if this ends at a different rate to this one, it doesn't matter, because I'll just replace it and keep this one until it runs out, and they're all independent. So it works really well for that sort of thing. And another thing that I really like them for is lesson plans. So this is two lesson plans for two different levels of a summer course that I teach. And it's perfect for that, because I've got one booklet for each. I know which is which. This is level 1, this is level 2. I can just grab this and take it with me every day. Before, I had my lesson plans on like individual pieces of paper in folders, and I had to remember to, you know, take the right day's piece of paper every day. And now it's just like, I just take this and that's it. So this is a really, really good use for them. But those are really the only uses that I have found for traveler's notebooks where I can use multiple booklets, lesson planning and the cinephile. So I feel that like that's kind of pathetic. But another use that I have for them, which is, I feel like is not making the most of them, but then on the other hand, you know, who cares, as long as we're having fun with planners, right? Like, it's not like there's an official guide to how you must use traveler's notebooks. I have ended up using most of mine just as notebook covers, and they're great because there's so many different cool traveler's notebooks available that it can be a lot easier to find a nice traveler's notebook than, you know, an equivalent notebook cover that's made as a notebook cover. And they work, you know, as long as you've got the right size, they work as notebook covers. So this one is housing my gratitude journal at the moment. And so this is an A6 Hobonichi, and it just happens to fit perfectly in this because this is personal size and it's got pockets that can be used as flaps to hold the notebook in. So I really like this, and I was saddened by the fact that I couldn't find a use for it as a traveler's notebook. I was going to use it initially to switch out my cinephile, just to switch back and forth, but I liked these both and I kind of wanted to use both of them. So I thought, why not? I will use this as a notebook cover. So it's I guess you could say it's not ideal for that because it's got the strings that aren't being used, which is a bit sad. But on the other hand, it's this beautiful notebook cover and I love it. So, you know, it's not that terrible. And then the same thing goes for this. I'm using these other Fodoras that I have as covers for my daily planners, which are bound notebooks. And that just makes me really happy. So I think I kind of feel like haven't quite found, I guess, I don't know, planner piece in a way, with like traveler's notebook piece, in that I feel like there must be a better way to use them, but these are the only ways that I have found so far in like a year plus of experimenting. So we will see if that changes in future. I will update you, but for now, that's kind of the only way that I have found to sort of comfortably use traveler's notebooks. Now we get on to the final type of planner. So I've saved my favorite for last, bound planners. And it's funny to me that like bound planners, actually my two favorite planning systems, discbound planners and bound planners, don't seem to be hugely popular. I'd say that ringbound planners and traveler's notebooks and spiral planners seem to be the most popular, judging by, you know, like the amount of videos that you see, like people using them. The happy planner is extremely popular though, and that's discbound, so it's not an exact science. But bound planners, like I said, going back to when I was a kid, I didn't use planners then, but I loved buying bound journals, like blank books. And I think, you know, sort of from that day on, I've just seen those as the epitome of, you know, like it's just the idea that it's a book, but it's your book and you can fill it with whatever you want. I really love the idea of that. And bound planners are the ones that like kind of speak to me most in that way. So along with spiral planners, which I used for a few years, for many years I used a bound planner. It was not a beautiful bound planner. It was a very, very basic, like kind of no brand one. And so I don't really feel like that I was kind of oppressing my love of beautiful stationery, I think. But I was just very used to the idea of a bound planner, and the idea of like adding in sections or removing pages, or, you know, like kind of making it my own, you know, divisions was just very foreign to me until I joined the planner community. So bound planners are just very like comfortable for me, and I guess maybe that's part of the reason why I like them. But as you can see, I have experimented with all the different types of planners over the last couple of years. So I think the reason that I still like them must be something more than that. So the pros for me are, for one thing, the aesthetics, like I mentioned, whether they have a cover or not. And that's something else that I like about them, is that you can put all these cool covers on them. But whether they have a cover or not, they are just a unit. So you've got the whole thing there. You can't take out the pages. So unlike spiral notebooks, where, like I said, you can just tear out the pages if you want to, and you might regret it later. With a bound planner, the whole thing is there for the year. Obviously, you can tear out a page, but it doesn't look very nice. So this is a double-edged sword, because you might make a mistake and then you're stuck with it for the year. But on the other hand, I love the fact that you always know where everything is going to be. It's right here. It's not going anywhere. It can't get mixed up. You can't remove it because you thought you wouldn't need those pages and then lose them, which is something that I could do with a ring planner. Like I said, sometimes that can feel like a bad thing, because, like, for example, here, this is my weeks, which is my personal planner. I have made quite a few changes in how I use it over the last however many months since November when I started it. So now, kind of like looking back, I regret, like, oh, I wish that I hadn't used those pencils, or I wish that I hadn't put those stickers in. And I can't change it. And I would be really tempted if this were a spiral planner or any other kind of planner, basically, except a traveler's notebook. I would just take out the offending pages and I would, you know, start over again with a blank slate. But I'm glad that I can't do that, because this has become a memory for me of the whole year. And I think for a lot of us, that's part of what we like about planning, in that, like, I don't keep a journal because I always just feel like I'm too busy and it's too stressful, and I'm just not going to set aside the time to do it. But the planner kind of becomes like a journal, because I can look back and say, oh, that's what I was doing on that day, and it will spark memories. And so the fact that this is all together and that I can't separate it means that it's just like a perfect unit. And at the end of the year, I can look back and see how I filled it all, and how it went from being this kind of blank, you know, like perfectly clean, pristine entity, to being like covered with my memories and what I was doing over the year. And, you know, like some of those things are mistakes, but that's fine. So that's one thing that I really like about bound planners. And, you know, kind of going hand in hand with that is the fact that you can so easily archive them. So I can just take like I can take out, I've got my planner, my Hobonichi cousin from last year, and I've got my Moleskine from the year before, and they're on the shelf, and I can just take them out and look at them, and they look exactly the same as they did when I was using them, in that, you know, it's not like they're a collection of loose pages, or like I've bound them together with something else, or they look exactly the same, and I can use them in the same way because they are like a book, but they're a completed book that I have created. So that's something that I really like about them, and I feel like that's actually, I think, something that I don't feel with any other planning system, even spiral bound planners, because like I said, they're not a unit in the same way, for me anyway. So that's, I think probably the major reason why I love them so much. And another reason is that they don't have any rings or any discs or anything getting in the way, any spirals. They're just like, it's just such a joy to write on them. You know, it's nothing getting in the way of the page. Traveler's notebooks are the same in that respect. So I should have mentioned that when I was talking about traveler's notebooks. So another thing that I like about them, which I know is kind of, I don't want to say controversial, but like not everybody agrees about this, but I like the fact, as with spiral notebooks, I like the fact that everything is set for you. So I just like knowing that this is what it's got, and you have to find one that works for you, that has what you want, because you can't change it too much. But I quite like that. So I like knowing my calendar is here, and then it has these blank pages. I can decide what to do with the blank pages, but everything is all set out for me, as opposed to like kind of having to decide, this is where I want my calendar, and this is where I want this, and this is where I want this section. I just like having it all come ready. But I can totally understand how someone could feel the opposite and say they like the freedom of being able to design exactly what they want. But yeah, I don't know why. I just like it to be all decided for me. And I guess that sort of leads us on to the cons, so the main one is that because you can't take pages out, if you make a mistake or you decide, like say with these notes sections, the way that I divided this up at the beginning of the year is not the way I would divide it now. And now I have to live with it for the rest of the year. Whereas if it were a ring planner, I could just say, okay, I don't like that. I'm going to rearrange these sections. So I think because I like bound planners so much, that doesn't bother me. But I have had some moments where I've copied something down and then realized I'd copied it in the wrong place, and then have to copy it over again. And then unless you have an erasable pen, you can't get rid of the wrong one. So that is a definite con to them. And another con is that you have to be careful about space. So like say this Hobonichi Weeks has 71 pages of notes, which is fantastic. But I still have to be kind of careful, because if I've mapped out, like I have 15 pages for X and then 10 pages for Y, I have to be really, really careful and sort of like budget, because otherwise I might end up running out of room, and then I'm stuck because I can't just add in some more pages as I could with a discbound planner or a ringbound planner. But on the whole, just the fact that it's like, look how beautiful it is. This is my Batman planner. I use this as my daily planner. The fact that it's just this like beautiful book, and it really does look like a hardbound. I mean, it is a hardbound book. That for me, somehow that's just the thing that like wins me over. And that's why if I had to pick one planner type, I would definitely pick bound planners. My second favorite would be discbound planners, because like I said, I feel like they kind of combine the best of both worlds. So you can customize them, but you can still keep everything together, and they look cute, and yes, I like that. And then the other ones, ringbound planners, spiral planners, and traveler's notebooks, I feel like they all have their own pros and cons, and I really love them for the particular purposes that I use them for. But definitely, if I had to pick like one type of planner as opposed to, you know, like document storage system or list file or whatever, it would have to be the bound planner. So I hope that you enjoyed this. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye.